Hey there, I'm Cynthia and welcome to the Dinner Fix, where I help answer the question, what's for dinner? Today I'm making one of my favorite Italian-American classics, chicken parm, which is, if you're not familiar with chicken parm, is a breaded cutlet of chicken that is typically pan-fried. We're going to be baking it today just to cut some of those calories out, but it's still going to be crunchy, delicious, covered with a really simple marinara sauce and some mozzarella cheese. I'll be serving this alongside some pasta, but you could certainly serve it alongside vegetables or anything else really that you'd like. You could also put it in a sandwich. It's really good. But let's get started. So first thing we're going to do is make our sauce. So I have here just a medium saucepan. Gonna get this going over like a medium low heat, and to this we're gonna add a couple of things. I've got some olive oil here. We're going to add half a tablespoon of tomato paste, and I like using tomato paste for quick sauces quick tomato based sauces because it imparts a whole lot of flavor that normally, in order to achieve, you'd have to cook a tomato sauce for a really long time. So this is kind of a cheat. I'm gonna add a pinch of red pepper flakes, and actually probably gonna add, oh, that's a pretty generous pinch. I like my red pepper flakes. And then I'm gonna add a couple of minced cloves of garlic. And we're just gonna cook this down until the tomato paste starts to brown, and that's going to take about 2 minutes. Just grab a spoon here, and you want to give this a stir pretty constantly because this garlic will burn if left unattended. So right now what we're doing is we're just trying to bloom some of these flavors without burning them. So it's been about a minute and a half of constant stirring, and there's kind of a fond that started to form on the bottom of this. And then the tomatoes smell like they started to caramelize. So at this point, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add, this is a 17-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. We're just gonna stir that in. That's it. Pretty simple, right? We're just going to cook this down until it's begun to thicken. That's going to take about 15 minutes, and then we'll add a couple of finishing touches to this once it's cooked. But for now, that's done. So I'm just going to move this actually to another burner over here. I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes. And let's move on to our chicken. Actually, before we get started on our chicken, I have a pot of water back here. This is about 3 quarts of water. I'm gonna get this boiling. So get that going so that it's ready to go at the same time that everything else is kind of coming together or starting to come together. So chicken. What you're gonna wanna do is I have here a rimmed baking sheet. I've lined it with some aluminum foil, and then I've placed a rack in here. We're gonna be cooking our chicken on that rack. So what you want to do is you want to take some non-stick cooking spray. I have, this is just olive oil that comes in these little spray bottles. I'm just going to spray that pretty generously because this chicken is going to want to stick. And then I'm just going to set that aside while I prep our chicken. All right, so chicken. I have here, this is a 7 to 8 ounce chicken breast that I've patted dry with paper towel. What we're gonna do, let me get rid of this, trade the paper towel for plastic wrap. All right, so chicken. What you wanna do, maybe I will do this here so you can actually see what I'm doing. I'm gonna slice this in half horizontally. Actually probably trim this little fatty part here first because I don't really wanna eat that. But that otherwise looks pretty good, pretty trimmed. All right, so I'm gonna cut this in half horizontally. So I'm just placing my flat palm on top, and I'm just gonna find the middle here, slide my knife right in, and make an incision, right? And then I'm just gonna keep slicing my way through until I've cut all the way through, trying as best you can to get a nice cut through the center and keeping that even. And of course, not slicing your fingers off in the process. But this is looking pretty good. All right, so now I have two, right, of these little chicken breasts. So what I'm gonna do now, let's get rid of this. All right, I'm gonna take a piece of plastic wrap. I'm gonna try to do this with one hand. I really don't want to have to wash my chicken hand quite yet. So we're gonna put a piece of plastic wrap over our chicken. And then this is my favorite part because it's where I get to let out some aggression built up over the course of the day. I'm gonna take a rolling pin, and you could use a meat mallet for this, but you're just gonna give this a whack. And what we wanna do is we wanna pound this to a thickness of about 1/2 inch. And you may notice that as I'm pounding, I'm kind of pounding down and out. That's gonna promote the spreading of the chicken. All right, that looks pretty good. Let me show you what that looks like. See, those are pounded pretty thin, got a nice even thickness on them. Let's bread some chicken. Right, so for the breading, we're gonna need a couple of things. First thing we're gonna need is some flour. And then we're gonna make an egg wash. So I have here just an egg, 1/2 tablespoon of water. Actually, this is a tablespoon. I'm gonna add 1/2 of that. So 1/2 tablespoon of water. It's gonna make an egg wash. And then I've got here some Parmesan cheese. And then earlier, I toasted some panko, breadcrumbs. So panko, if you're not familiar, it's a coarse breadcrumb. It's gonna give this chicken a really nice crunch, an audible crunch, and when I taste this at the end of this, you're gonna hear it. So I like using the panko, but it is a really kind of pale color, and I find that if you just bread this in panko, stick it in the oven, you're not gonna get as nice a color as you would if you toast it in advance. So what I did earlier is I just added a little bit of olive oil to this panko, toasted it over low heat on the stovetop, just kept an eye on it, stirred it pretty frequently until it was nice and toasted like this. And this is cooled off. So what I'm gonna do at this point is I'm gonna add our panko to our cheese. And I should give that a stir. And this is going to be the outer layer to our chicken. Now for the egg and the water earlier, we're just going to whisk this. I'm just using a fork. You could use a whisk for this. Just going to make a nice egg wash. And this is what is going to help our outer crust adhere to our chicken. All right, and then finally our flour. We're gonna add a teaspoon of salt to this. Just gonna give this a stir. Let's use this. And this is really all the seasoning that this chicken is going to have. All right, so what we're gonna do, I'm gonna take my rack, position it closer to where I'm working. And the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna take one of these chicken breasts. You're gonna dredge it in the flour. Let's see. Can you see? Yeah, well, let's see. All right, so we've dredged it in flour. I'm shaking off the excess. Maybe I should move this. Yes. This will enable you to better see. All right. I was like, I know you can't see that. All right. So I just dredged this in flour, shook off the excess. We don't want a whole lot of flour. This flour is just going to help the egg stick to our chicken. If we just dipped this chicken in egg, it would slide right off, which will not help our cause. So it's going to go next into the egg wash, coat it on both sides, and then into the panko and cheese mixture, again getting that on both sides. Now before I make a mess of my fingers, I'm just going to let that sit there. I'm going to repeat the process with flour, shake it off, egg wash, and then actually let's leave that there. Let's take our spoon and kind of just pour that over. I mean, you could do that with your fingers, but then what starts to happen is you start to get panko stuck to your fingers and it makes a mess. So using the spoon will help. And I'm just pressing that in. And by pressing on the top, you're also kind of pressing the crumbs on the bottom into the bottom. So you could see that you've got a nice crust going there, but I did flip it, and I'm just gonna keep kind of scooping this and pressing it in. We wanna make sure that this, ow, I just burned myself. Gotta be careful, gotta be careful. I just wanna make sure that this is evenly coated with our panko and cheese. And this is gonna be delicious. All right, I think that looks pretty good. So shake off the excess. That looks pretty good. And then we're just gonna transfer it to our rack. And then let's repeat the process. I'm gonna do one last thing. You'll notice there's some extra chicken here. I had like little tender pieces, like tiny little pieces. I didn't wanna throw those away, so I breaded those as well. Get some bonus chicken out of this recipe. So I'm just spraying the top of this chicken with the olive oil. Again, you could use cooking spray for that. And then this is gonna bake in a 475, yes, 475, I know that's hot, degree oven. Until this is cooked through, you're gonna see these are gonna be absolutely crispy and delicious. So into the oven they go. All right, and just as our chicken went into the oven, two things happened simultaneously. One, our water came to a boil. So I'm going to season that pretty generously with salt. Remember, you want really salty water when you're cooking pasta because it's hard to add salt to it after the fact. Let me just give that a stir to dissolve. And I'm just cooking spaghetti for this. But as I mentioned earlier, you don't have to do pasta, you can do something else. Let me just taste this for salt. Being careful because this was just boiling seconds ago. Perfect, perfectly salty. So adding half a pound of pasta. Had a couple casualties. All right, perfect. So just cook that according to the manufacturer's instructions. The other thing that happened as our chicken was going into the oven is our sauce timer went off. This is thickened up pretty considerably. These flavors have melded some. We're gonna season this as well. I don't know if you recall, but we did not season it earlier. So I'm gonna start off with about a half teaspoon of kosher salt. Give that a taste. Perfect. All right, and then I've got here some basil, and I'm just going to mince this basil. All right, that looks pretty good. So into our sauce it goes. That looks pretty good. So sauce is done, chicken is in the oven, pasta is cooking. At this point, there's not a whole lot left to do, but wait. All right, there goes our timer for our chicken. So let's take a look. Oh man, that looks delicious. See if you can see that. Look at that. Nice, crispy, golden brown. That is gonna be absolutely delicious. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take some of our sauce and we're going to put maybe like 2 tablespoons kind of on the top. Just spread it like so. Okay. So then we're gonna top this just with some freshly grated mozzarella cheese. I am so excited to eat. And then this is gonna go back into the oven for about 5 minutes, just until that cheese is melted and nice and bubbly. Meanwhile, our pasta's done, so I'm just gonna drain this. All right, so pasta's drained. I'm gonna take what's left of our sauce and I'm just gonna pour it over the pasta. Get all of that sauce in there. All right, and we're just gonna toss this. All right, that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to clamp a lid on this and that's done. And then as soon as that cheese is melted, we're gonna eat. All right, let's check on our chicken. Yummy, yummy, yummy. Let's see if you can get a look at that. You can see our cheese is nice and melted, ooey gooey, delicious. Let us eat. All right, so to plate. Let's move this over here. I'm just gonna take some of our pasta that was cooked in our sauce, and if you recall, that sauce was really simple, just tomatoes, garlic, red pepper flakes, olive oil, basil. We're just gonna, oh, and tomato paste, right? Our cheat ingredient that enabled us to get a whole lot of flavor out of this sauce, or into this sauce rather, without having to cook it for hours on end. Then we're gonna take one of our chicken breasts, and that came right off because we went to the trouble, not really trouble, but we took that extra step to make sure we greased the rack really well so that it didn't stick. And then the last thing we're gonna do before we dig right into this is I'm just gonna garnish this with a little bit of just julienned basil. All right, there you have it, chicken parm. All right, enough talking, let's give this a taste. I don't know if you can hear that crunch, but that is some crunchy, crunchy chicken. Absolutely delicious. Though I probably should have taken a smaller bite. Let's get some of that sauce on there. Little rogue piece of pasta. Absolutely delicious. All right, well, I'm gonna keep eating. Thanks so much for watching. I look forward to reading your comments once you've tried this one at home. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time. Enjoy.